So a year after the establishment of the State of Israel, the chief rabbinate said, this is such a miraculous event. Remember, 2,000 years being divorced from your land, and like it says in Isaiah 66:8, a nation will be born in a day. Well, that's exactly what happened. We prayed and hoped for this. Now it's actually here. This is an extraordinary event that deserves praise to the extent that we'll invoke Psalms 113 to 118. So 22 centuries later, from Hanukkah until now, we actually have a sacred holiday on the Jewish calendar. Now, it wasn't the most popular thing to do within Judaism because you're sort of instituting a new type of holiday and you're evoking these praise psalms. But over the years, more and more Jews from all over the world began going ahead and invoking these psalms in their corporate liturgy in the morning of Israel's Independence Day. So I felt in my heart, is like, in Jewish-Christian relations, imagine we can have Jews inviting the Christian world in to recite these psalms with us in acknowledging the miracle of the State of Israel in our lifetime. To me, the best answer to any atheist is explain the existence of the Jewish people. There's no logical reason in the world that we should be here today. It's only by God's unfailing love for his people, for his covenantal word. And this is my biggest proof, the State of Israel. If God is faithful to me, he's definitely faithful to you as a Christian. So why can't we just come together and acknowledge and praise God for the restoring of Israel in our lifetime? And we'll do this in Psalms 113 to 118. So we actually did an experiment during the Feast of Tabernacles last year where we invited the local Christian community with a few Jewish leaders in the Israeli community. Mm-hmm. And we actually did Psalms 113 to 118. We did a worship service together. And it worked really, really well. And the Christians felt they were part of the service, not as spectators, but actually participants in the service. And this became the inspiration to launch the Day to Praise, this annual event where we're inviting the Christians all over the world to recite these 6 Psalms on one day. We actually will hold the service here in Jerusalem, not far from here, from your headquarters in Jerusalem. And we're going to do a praise service for God.
Now, when you say invoke the Psalms, what do you mean?
Invoking the Psalms means that we put these Psalms in our morning liturgy in Judaism. This is things that we're doing anyway. So why can't we bring the Christian into this authentic expression of praise for God as two faith communities, expressing the same thing of this amazing God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, still protecting this land, still having his hand over this. And the difference between, I would say, the Psalms of 113 to 118 of Israel's Independence Day than any other biblical feast or rabbinic feast is that this is a continuing narrative. In the other feasts, it's something that happened to us before. We're remembering something. These Psalms are still in the moment. Things are still happening, right? God is not finished yet. So this is like present, future. And that's, I think, is very important to understand and put into the praise aspect of what we're doing.
Would you say many of the conditions that existed in 1948 still exist today when Israel is surrounded by enemies that want to destroy it?
Well, that's Psalm 118. For me, that's sort of like the basis, even though we're surrounded by all this. Death is always lurking over Israel. This is Psalm 91. Like, I can tell you this, when the rockets were going over Netanya, Psalm 91 came to mind. It's not the Iron Dome that protects us, it's the God Dome. It's his hand. There could be 10,000 arrows, 10,000 rockets. At the end of the day, there's this miracle that happens that God's protection is over this land. We wake up in miracles every single day in this land. And just walking the land, you feel God's presence more than any other place in the world. So imagine that we have the local Christian community here along with the Jewish community praising God on one day that's designated for praise.
And if people want to know more about it, how could they get more information?
You go to day2praise.com and you'll find all the information, the historical background behind the Psalms. We actually wanted to provide resources to people who are interested about the background of these Psalms, but also we're producing worship songs. And actually, you should just know that in the last time an album was created in Judaism on these Psalms were about 35 years ago. So we felt it's necessary to sort of bring if we're going ahead and reaching out to the Christian community, they should have worship songs that relate to these psalms. So we're actually producing this as we go along.